Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Tara Martini, along with host Becky McNattin. We're glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
And today we also have Amanda Sullivan back on our show.
Yay.
We missed you so much that we needed to have you back again after just a few weeks. So welcome.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, Amanda, you have several things in your life that you're passionate about, but there is one that is very high on the list. And anybody who knows you knows this, but our listeners might not. That thing is yoga.
Yes.
And a big part of our practice at Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness is programming that moves beyond talk therapy alone to offer avenues for self-exploration that include a whole bunch of other options. And we call these experiential therapies and physical movement, especially yoga is an experiential therapy that you specialize in. And you're trained as a yoga teacher, and yoga is a big part of your life.
Yes.
So we're talking about yoga and mental health today. But first, tell us your journey to discovering yoga.
Yeah. Well, I've been practicing yoga probably for like 10-ish years. And I started out as a very like casual go to yoga type of person. It was something to like accompany kind of like the workout regimen that I was in at the time. I was interested in it because I knew that there was an emphasis on breathing and mindfulness. And I thought from the perspective of like anxiety and stress that could be really helpful for me.
Yeah.
And then I would say about 4-ish years ago, I was going through some bigger shifts in terms of like my own life. And I really needed something that was grounding. And, you know, I was like just struggling with some of the changes that I was going through. And I met a teacher, shout out to Jamie, who really emphasized yoga philosophy through her teaching in a way that I hadn't experienced in yoga before. And she did this by kind of bringing together these themes where like the poses and the music and the things that she said to accompany her classes all kind of fit into like a theme. And I noticed myself starting to have these reactions that felt very therapeutic for me.
A shift, because it's almost like how you explain Jamie and how she presents, and I've been a part of Jamie's sessions, it's almost like narrative poetry in the way she does it.
Yeah.
Where you're part of a story.
Right. And I noticed that I started to have these experiences, like sometimes it was a release, like crying in class. Sometimes it was that I was having these insights about like my own experiences in connection to like my body and my thoughts.
Yeah.
Sometimes it felt like I left class feeling just like more grounded and like I had like left something on my yoga mat. And so the ways yoga started to resonate with me physically and emotionally prompted me to want to learn more about yoga and to do yoga teacher training.
Got it. So
That's an amazing journey.
yoga went from a fitness piece
Yes.
to a mental health piece.
Totally.
And probably mental wellness piece. So you started to notice this is a kind of a centering spot. So in your opinion, how would you say yoga and mental health are connected?
Yeah. The more that I started to learn about yoga, and I remember saying this to you very early on, that I was like, yoga has a lot of like similar philosophies and practice and parallels to like modern day psychology.
Yeah.
And we'll go into some more about what that looks like. But I was like really seeing all these ways in which yoga had a lot of similarities to the work that I was doing as a therapist and to some of the therapeutic approaches and interventions that we use. And I started to see how the way in which yoga, when practiced through this 8-limbed kind of path that we'll talk about, was really helpful to people's mental health in the bringing together of mind, body, spirit, and breath. And so yoga is a practice that can help our mental health because of the philosophy and because of the aspects of yoga around mindfulness and breath work. And again, that connection between mind, body, spirit. I also say that yoga is like nervous system work. And I've been on here lots talking about nervous system.
Yeah.
Our nervous system before. It helps us to pay attention to discomfort and learn to breathe through it, which we'll talk more about after the break.
It is what lots of times we talk on this show about somatic.
Yes.
That yoga is a huge way to promote wellness through that.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we talk through yoga as a way to promote mental wellness. Thanks for listening to Feels Out Loud. We'll be right back.
All you got to do now. Nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, you don't know what's right.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Tara Martini, along with the fabulous Becky McNattin. Let's dive right back into our discussion on yoga and mental health.
And today, everyone, we're talking about yoga as a tool or avenue to process emotion and promote mental wellness. I really think that people are looking for thoughtful ways to promote health in their lives, including mental health. And the past decade has been filled with getting the message out there that our minds and bodies are connected. We've certainly talked on the show a lot about that. But I don't think yoga has always been thought of as a way to promote mental well-being in our culture. And with this in mind, as we get started today, I'd love for each of us to share our experiences with yoga. Amanda, you shared a little bit, so I'll have you go last. But Tara,
Yes.
what have been your experiences with yoga?
Well, I always saw it, just like Amanda, how you started your relationship with yoga. It was from a fitness perspective. And so I always thought that was just all it was. And I would go and not really have a strong reaction to it. It'd be more frustrating because I couldn't hold the poses and things like that. And oddly enough, it wasn't until a session with Jamie where, with her style of yoga, I just had this profound emotional response to it. I, as Amanda, you had said, like, you can even develop strong emotions, whether it's crying or some type of somatic release. And that change, was a game changer for me, where I was like, this is what I think this is supposed to be about. And I have that amazing view of it. Have I continued on my yoga journey? No, dear.
Okay.
No, I haven't. Unless the beautiful Amanda puts on a class, and then I'll be like, I'll join.
Yeah. For me, I'm so similar to you in I did not like yoga. I had told myself I was never going to be a pretzel. I like pretzels,
Amen.
but I could never be a pretzel. And I had this picture in my head of the people who do yoga wear really cute clothes and can bend their body in ways mine doesn't. And I have had an interesting relationship with mindfulness that I told myself that's not for me. So that was a long time ago that I just said, no, my mind doesn't do that. So even when people would say, well, yoga is so zen, I was thinking, no, it's not, because I'm hurting as I'm doing it.
Correct. And thinking negative.
And I went to a yoga class actually with you years ago.
I remember.
And the teacher walked around, and I remember being so exceptionally anxious in this class because she told us when we were doing poses wrong. She would model a pose for us and then would come and actually move your body into what the pose was supposed to be. And perfectionist Becky, who has spoken about this many times on the show, I was so caught up in, am I doing it right or wrong? I couldn't think about absolutely anything else. And my muscles were super tense. I was comparing how other people were doing things to what I was doing. It was not until I sat with sweet Amanda, probably just 2 years ago, actually, when you said to me in a very, I would say, inconsequential moment, we were talking about yoga, and you said, Becky, yoga's a mindset. It's a framework or a paradigm. It isn't only a pose. And that stuck with me because I was thinking, wait, but I don't think it is.
Not for me. It's still the not for me mentality. Because your mindset.
And then I started to wonder when we talk about curiosity, I started to try to be curious about, well, is it more than, or could it be something else in addition to what I thought it was, or what was even told to me? Because I do think when someone was walking around in the yoga class telling us what the pose was, that was very different from what you said to me. Everything is yoga. Breathing is yoga, as you said. And that's shifted my experience with yoga. What would you say your experiences with yoga have been, Amanda?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting hearing about your guys' experience, because people often come up to me and they'll say things like, I'm not flexible. So I'm like, and I've started saying to people, are you not physically flexible? Or are you not mentally flexible? Because yoga is really about mental flexibility.
That's a really great
not
point.
Physical flexibility. Although, again, and we're going to get to talk about some of the misconceptions today about yoga and what it is. But again, for me, I think over these past 4 years, doing yoga teacher training, reading more books involving yoga, I have really taken the philosophy and paradigm part of yoga, and I think really incorporated that into the way that I live, in addition to like going to classes several times a week. That's a part of my practice. Doing meditation and breath work at home. I just love helping people figure out like what is an approach to yoga. And sometimes it doesn't even ever involve going to a yoga class that might work for me.
Interesting.
And so for me, it's this thing that I kind of need to have like a touch point every day. And whether it's like just breathing or meditation or going to a class, thinking about how am I living yoga philosophy today. It's something that, Becky, you have called what I do yoga informed living. And I love that.
Yes, I have said that. Would you tell us what the types of yoga are?
Yes.
Or yoga informed living? Because I like that phrase.
I'm not going to go into all of the types of yoga because there are like a ton of different styles of yoga, and depending on like where you practice, I'm just going to go over a few of the ones that you might see like locally or at yoga studios around here that we might have at BT, so that you can kind of get a sense of what they might look like. So vinyasa yoga, this is the yoga that a lot of people are familiar with as being more of like a workout style. It is often more fast-paced, a lot of standing poses. You're moving, each inhale and exhale is related to a movement. So it is fairly fast-paced. And it's often done in heated rooms. It involves something called sun salutations. And again, it can often be seen as a workout. But it was formed from several types of yoga that came before it, Vini yoga and Ashtanga yoga. And again, I think it's one of the most common forms of yoga that we see kind of in the United States today.
I think that's what we experienced.
I think so.
And it was also like 95 degrees in that room.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which can be very a shock to your nervous system if you've never practiced hot yoga before, which actually goes into what I tell people to start with if they've never practiced yoga but want to do some standing poses and some floor poses, is something called hatha style yoga, which is typically a bit slower paced than a vinyasa, but you are still getting maybe sun salutations depending on the teacher in the studio, more standing poses, but it's not quite as fast. But they are really focusing on this connection between the physical postures, asana, and breath work, which is pranayama.
Okay.
Another very common type that a lot of people practice here is called yin yoga.
I've heard of that.
And yin yoga is longer held poses. It's much slower paced. It's mostly happening on the floor. And you're holding poses for anywhere from like 3 to 10 minutes. And the purpose of this type of yoga is really to target our connective tissues. So there's a physical reason why we're doing the poses in the way that we are on the floor. And then restorative, which is another type that people see, which is going to be even slower paced, but the purpose really is, as it's in its name, restorative. It's relaxation. And you're holding one pose for maybe even up to 20 minutes, but you're using a lot of props, bolsters, things like that to really create a sense of relaxation in your nervous system, not a sense of tension as that might be present in some of the other forms of yoga. So those are some of the really common ones that we practice here in the United States. In most classes, you can expect some sort of like physical movement, which again can look very different. There's a whole spectrum of what that movement looks like. So it's like, yeah, you don't have to be able to do a handstand or be super flexible. There's a type of yoga that would probably work for you from a physical standpoint. And an emphasis on breath, and then this facilitation by the teacher, hopefully, of the connection between your mind and body.
I love that. And I think for listeners, I think you providing such a great example and description of the different kinds is super helpful, because they may be listening going, oh yeah, that one doesn't sound like I would feel comfortable in that, but oh my gosh, I didn't know this other one exists. That I feel my body would accept more. So amazing to make them aware of it.
Yeah. What would you say yoga has done to change the relationship with your body?
That's a great question. And I think there's a lot of facets to it. I think the first thing that I think about is I think I appreciate my physical body so much more than I used to. I think that yoga has helped me to emphasize and really notice like the things that my body is capable of doing versus the things that it isn't. And I think I love when yoga teachers are like, hey, this sounds really scary, but like, you don't know if you don't try. And so
very true.
Like, can I do a handstand yet? No, but I don't know if I don't try to do some handstand hops in class, right? And I'll never be able to do it if I don't try. So again, just that appreciation and seeing my body become stronger over the course of doing yoga has been really cool. So again, I think really focusing on what my body can do versus being critical of it in ways that I maybe used to be. I've also become way more, I think, attuned to my somatic experiences. So noticing where I store and hold tension, slowing down.
That makes sense.
I know I've told you this before, Becky, that like sometimes I'll sit in my yoga mat and I'll like start to breathe. I'll be like, oh my gosh, my back hurts so bad. Would go the whole day not noticing that I was holding a ton of tension
Yes.
in my back and shoulders until I sat down on my yoga mat and really gave myself the space to like pay attention to what was happening. And when we notice what's happening, we're able to do something about the way that those emotions are stored. So just like that increased attunement. And then again, awareness to the relationship between my body, my breath, my mind, and like my spirit. I think really amazing, yoga teachers help facilitate kind of that connection between what's coming up for you mentally while you're in this pose. How do you use your breath to work through what's happening mentally? And there is this aspect of yoga when we talk about the 8-limb path that is really like a spiritual part of it that you can access through meditation and practicing a connection with something like bigger than yourself. So
that makes a lot of sense to me.
It does.
I want to go back to because we've referenced it a couple of times, and I think Tara started with misconceptions about yoga, or at least stories that we've heard about yoga that maybe aren't full truths.
Yeah,
right.
Because we can then story it as this is the only thing that yoga is. So it might not be that it's totally untrue, but it is more to that.
Yeah.
Would you share a little bit more about some of the misconceptions of yoga?
Yeah. Well, you said one, Becky, which is that I have to have this like certain cute little outfit to practice yoga, right? And I think athleisure and the rise of these athleisure brands has like totally done that to people. So I think one of the big misses is that I have to have like certain clothes or a mat, etc., to practice yoga. And that is just like so not true. First of all, you can practice yoga wearing any clothes.
Yeah, part of that is capitalism.
Totally.
That the world has told us, or our society has told us, in order to do it the right way, you need these things.
You must look that way.
And but the way that yoga, you're saying the intention of yoga is that you could do yoga anywhere. With anything.
Totally. Another misconception is that what, like we've talked about a little bit, is that yoga is nothing more than a workout or it's only physical. I think especially people who don't know, I think people who practice yoga know that it's more than just a workout. Right. But I think people who haven't practiced before do very much view it as this like physical thing that, again, if I can't do it physically, like then I shouldn't try.
Well, and sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
That to go off of Becky's example, a lot of it, I bet, too, is someone may have an isolated incident. Like the one session they tried to do yoga was very much like a workout and physical, and maybe the instructor was not ideal. So then they take that as an absolute and then walk away from it, where there's just so much more to it.
Right. And again, that goes to one of the other misconceptions, which we talked about earlier, which is that I have to be flexible or I have to be able to do handstands. And one thing I've learned from doing yoga is like, everyone's way more worried about what's happening on their own mat than they are about what's happening on mine. And they're not watching me.
That probably is one beautiful application to mental wellness.
Yes.
That we tend to think that people and our own criticality of ourselves is much more than the criticality that is coming externally to us.
Totally.
But we get ourselves thinking that, and yoga becomes this very practical application of what is happening right here. Other people are not criticizing in the same way that I'm criticizing.
They're not even aware.
Yep. Another big one that I hear from a lot of people is that yoga is a religion. And while yoga has roots in Eastern religions, and while there are aspects of yoga for some people that do include spiritual aspects, yoga in and of itself is not an organized religion. And so I think that that's another common misconception. Again, we'll talk about some of its roots in some of those Eastern religions, but it isn't, meant to be practiced as a religion.
Yeah. So if there's things that it isn't, then so what is it?
Great question. So don't know if you guys know this, but yoga actually means to yoke or to unite.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Did you know that?
Only because I've heard you say that before.
Okay.
So
you are an English human, an English teacher.
So again, it's really focused on this connection between mind, body, spirit. And that is like, our internal experience. I also think that yoga also has this focus on connection with self, with others around us, our close relationships, but also in the world. And so yoga is a philosophy. It is a set of moral and ethical principles that help inform the way we live, the eight-limbed path, which we're going to get to. And this physical practice, which is asana, provides opportunities for us to practice the application and practice of these concepts that come before it in the eight limbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, will you tell us about them then?
Yes. So
when you're saying 8 limbs,
yes,
we're saying 8 limbs like your arms are limbs.
Literal limbs, or are we talking figuratively here, people?
Yeah. So listeners, that's sort of the image, at least that I get when we say limb. These are aspects of,
yes,
branches of a tree.
Yep.
Okay.
And there are 8 of them.
There are 8.
Okay.
So the first one are called the yamas, which are our ethical restraints or moral obligations. So a lot of these have to do with ways that we treat other people. So some of them include nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing. And again, they're really about the way that we should morally interact with people around us and with the world.
That's beautiful.
Second is the niyamas, which are personal observances to help us develop our relationships with ourselves. So things like contentment, discipline, self-study, surrender. These are all some of the niyamas. And again, those are things that we practice internally to help us develop that positive relationship with us. And then third is asana, which is the physical practice, the poses, which is what most people know.
Okay. The actual poses.
The actual poses. Pranayama, which is breath control. And so breath is what helps with regulation of both our physical mind and body. It helps prepare us for a meditative state. And again, it helps to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So breathwork is a huge part of yoga, and the connection between the asana and the breath is something that you'll hear a lot in yoga classes. The next part is pratyahara, which is sense withdrawal. So again, that's kind of like tuning out things that are external, tuning inward. The next one is dharana, which is concentration. So again, that concentration on our breath, on the current moment, it gives us a chance to practice mindfulness and continuing to bring ourselves back to the present moment. And then dhyana is a meditative state. It's not something that you can practice. It's a state that you get to through the other practices of mindfulness, breath work.
Okay. Sort of an outcome.
An outcome, yes. And then the last one is samadhi, which is, again, results from meditation. It's not something in and of itself we practice. It's the result. And it's the sense of connection. I say it's a sense of connection with something beyond ourselves, whether that's like spiritual enlightenment or connection with whatever we believe in from a spiritual perspective. But again, it's that connection that you develop as a result of these other practices.
Wow. So working toward that level and achieving that.
Yes.
Wow.
And in a yoga class, are these principles or 8 limbs referenced?
It really depends on the teacher. So I would say that you're always going to hear people talk about noticing your breath in a yoga class. I don't know that I've ever been to a yoga class where that hasn't happened. Of course, there are some sort of physical poses typically. Sometimes people will talk about the specific, they'll name the specific yamas or niyamas, but sometimes they're talking about them in other ways, using different words or theming to kind of get you still to that kind of same place, but sometimes through like stories, sometimes through just kind of reflecting, things like that. I would say that the last 4 that we talked about, or 3 that we talked about, are maybe not as often talked about in yoga classes. But people who practice yoga regularly, that might be part of what they're seeking as part of their yoga experience.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about listeners who are sitting there today hearing this. It makes so much sense to me why you, Amanda, would be saying that yoga is a philosophy or yoga is a framework in which to see the world, because you're naming things that aren't only our body movement.
Right.
You're talking about ethics. That's a belief system.
Totally.
Values.
That's values.
Yes.
These things that we're noticing. You mentioned self-study and surrender. These kind of personal concepts of exploration and growth. Definitely, you talked about spirituality and existential questioning.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense to me that people who practice yoga would say, well, this is an embodiment of those beliefs,
Totally.
but it is much more than any of the one things.
Yep.
That I've lately been limiting it. What would you say, Tara?
Oh,
You're staring at me.
when I'm hearing you speaking, I think so many people, it's a self-fulfilled prophecy, right? I'm not good
Good
at
point.
yoga,
Mhm.
therefore I'm never going to be good at it. And then you realize your skills are not improving. But I think it's that mindset.
Well, and I think part of what has happened, unfortunately, is that yoga in the United States, my perception of it is that we've lost some of the emphasis on the philosophy and honoring of the cultural traditions related to yoga, in a sense of making it a workout when that's not what it was intended to be. And so I think that, again, people who haven't practiced or aren't close within the yoga community, or maybe have had not great experiences like the one that Becky talked about, maybe aren't aware of the philosophy and framework that yoga exists within.
Absolutely. It makes me think about you've named this so well, Amanda, that the difference between yoga for fitness and yoga for mental health is perhaps understanding what yoga has and always been intended to be.
Right.
That it is a perspective of the world,
Right.
and the way in which we exist in that world.
Mhm.
I want to talk about yoga and mental health.
Yeah.
And I have a question for you because I'm kind of thinking through, you mentioned, are you physically flexible or are
Mhm.
you emotionally flexible? Yoga poses can
Yeah.
be tough to hold. Do you think how we handle the discomfort of yoga could also be how we handle emotional discomfort in our lives?
I feel like you already know the answer to that, which is yes.
Well, okay, I want to pause then for if a listener, think about that question that I just asked everybody.
Yeah.
Because if there's a yoga pose, or if you've never done yoga and then try it,
Yeah.
and you find yourself saying things like what you just said, Tara, I can't do this. This is too
Yep.
hard.
Yeah, negative
Is that
self-talk.
how you also approach your existence?
Mhm.
And as you were talking about, are you physically inflexible? Does that apply to mental inflexibility as well? Kind of blew my mind that, wow, this could be a way to practice. No wonder mind-body connection can be so healing. We could literally practice physically holding discomfort.
Yes. And I want to first say that for people, depending on their physical capacity, any pose can be uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. So it isn't necessarily that we're talking about super hard poses like handstands. Sometimes the hardest pose for me is just the one that's I'm laying on the floor, not moving, and someone's asking me to be still.
Yeah. You're not referencing pretzel poses here. Yes.
And so the discomfort in yoga can be both mental and physical, and those different poses evoke different responses in people. And so it's exactly what you said, are our thoughts in this yoga pose I can't do this, this needs to stop, this is too hard, I'm not capable. And it gives us an opportunity. And a lot of teachers will ask you to tune in to what's the message you're sending yourself right now as I'm asking you to hold this pose.
Yeah.
And reflecting that you have an opportunity in that moment to say, this is hard, but I can keep trying. I can handle this.
Yeah.
I can take one more breath.
Well,
And if I fall out, I can try again.
And I'm also thinking about the flip side of it. And being in part of one of your yoga classes, you said frequently, there are all sorts of adaptations. I'm paraphrasing this, but you can do this pose and this pose and this pose. Part of the discomfort of yoga people for me was that I did not necessarily say to myself, I could utilize adaptation. It had to be done this particular way. The discomfort for me, you're not saying only hold a pose that feels bad.
Right.
The discomfort might be in adapting it to meet the need of what your body needs.
Yeah.
And tolerating the mentalization of that thing that I don't need an adaptation. Don't tell me I need it. So it isn't only take another breath and feel discomfort because this is hard. The discomfort might be in finding a different way to make this doable for your body right now.
Absolutely.
Well, and when you look at yoga from the perspective that you're sharing today, even just taking in what both of you are saying, I've realized that wow, like the next time I were to go to a yoga class, just different perspectives as far as like you're doing a pose and it's difficult. Well, is it difficult because your body doesn't bend that way? Or do you have stored emotions or trauma or stress and
Sure.
things like that
hmm
within you that's causing that
Yeah.
discomfort? If you can look at it from the
Right.
connection with mental health and
Yeah.
the
And
physical.
if your body can't move that way, can you accept that that's okay? That the
Yes.
pose isn't going to look the same in my body as it does in my neighbor's body because we're not the same person and we don't have the same body.
Yeah.
Right.
And am I okay with being okay with that?
Mhm.
And like you said, Becky, of it not having to be perfect. I think yoga is a constant practice of like there is no perfect. People tell me all the time I'm bad at yoga. I'm like, that's impossible. You can't be bad at it. It's also not something I think you can be good at. It is
Mhm.
just something that you do. And there isn't a way to achieve goodness at this
Mhm.
this thing.
Wow.
Yeah, that leads me to this curiosity they've had about the ways that yoga integrates self-compassion and self-acceptance.
Mhm.
And you just mentioned
Yeah.
accepting of self. Every time I've been in a class with you, you talk about being kind to ourselves.
Mhm.
You talk about being gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
You'll mention that as people are going to go into a series of poses. How do you see self-compassion and self-acceptance as important aspects of yoga practice?
It's a great question, and I do emphasize it a lot in my classes because I think it's so important. And it is actually ahimsa, which is nonviolence, is the foundation of like a lot of the yoga principles. It's the first yama, and it's not just nonviolence; it's also love, and it's not just nonviolence towards other
That's a good
people
point.
and love towards others. It's also love and nonviolence towards ourselves.
Towards
and
ourselves.
think about how often we talk with clients about this constantly about how mean we are to ourselves in ways
Mhm.
that we never would be to other people. And so I think yoga really gives us, when it does become physically or mentally challenging, it gives us an opportunity to turn inward and to show more love to ourselves and to our body. Again, I think it also helps to find that balance between listening to our bodies and avoidance. I do think that on the opposite end of the spectrum, Becky, from you of like wanting it to be perfect, is that sometimes people avoid a pose because it's too hard,
Yeah.
versus like your body needing something different. And so, how can you kind of tune into like, am I avoiding this because it's uncomfortable, or am I actually listening to what my body needs? And that's
Mhm.
something that I think yoga can help you to develop, which I
Mhm.
think is incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are we not doing something because we're already telling ourselves we won't be whatever we think it needs to be?
Yeah.
Right.
And so do we take a step back? And how that gives us the opportunity to tune into some of these emotional health concepts
Mhm.
like self-talk.
Yeah.
What is going on in my brain right now? What would you say are some benefits of yoga on emotional health? We talk about self-talk there, which has got to be one of them.
It totally is one of them. I think also it is this well, it's interesting you say self-talk and like what is my mind doing, because there's this one of the yoga sutras talks about chitti vritti, which is the mental fluctuations of the mind. And so it is again noticing
Interesting.
how our monkey mind is working and learning to still that, which again, does that sound like CBT, mindfulness,
Yes.
meditation to anybody? Like,
Yeah.
So much of this.
so much of it. And so
Yeah, their whole theories, everyone. Cognitive behavioral theory, if you look it up, is our thoughts impact our feelings, impact our actions.
yes,
That would be that.
right. And so there's actually some really cool research about yoga. One of the studies that I found was done in 2003 with female veterans, and they engaged in trauma sensitive yoga. I think it was 10 60-minute sessions, so 10 weeks, 1 hour a week. And actually the outcomes showed to be as effective and have better retention than cognitive processing therapy for people who have PTSD.
Wow.
Yeah.
In that short time frame.
That short time frame, and that's for a lot of reasons. I think part of it is the way in which these 8 limbs, and especially the movement and the pranayama, when we put those things together, how it activates our parasympathetic nervous system and helps us get into a state of rest. That helps our mental health. We also know that it helps reduce cortisol. It increases gray matter in the brain. People's sleep improves when they practice yoga. So there are a ton of outcomes that benefit our mental health, in addition to just what we've been talking about this whole time, which is like I'm becoming more aware of the connection between my mental and physical body and how I can respond to that, whether it's with my breath or with a change in my mindset to create a different experience for myself.
That makes so much sense to me. Who might be a good fit for mental health care through yoga?
Anyone who's willing and open to it, I think, which is what I love about yoga is like, again, I think people are very set on, I have physical limitations that won't allow me to do yoga. Again, you can sit on a mat in a chair, breathe, and be doing yoga. So I think it's really for anyone who is open to the idea that yoga might be something that they would be interested in incorporating. I definitely think a lot of people who do like yoga are maybe people who don't. Some of them might like talk therapy, but it might be a great thing to try for people who have had maybe hesitations about talk therapy, maybe not gotten the results from talk therapy that they wanted.
Yeah.
Again, because talk therapy, while incredible, of course, because I'm a talk therapist, does have some limitations in terms of those outcomes in terms of how our bodies and brains might be physically changing as a result that do happen in things like yoga or some of the other trauma focused modalities that we've discussed.
And what a gift for people to hear that talk therapy has not really worked for me. And trying something like yoga to really have that connection and realize that they can process and heal in a different way.
Yeah. And what I hear you saying is that yoga as a mental health care strategy could be an addendum to talk therapy,
Totally.
Sure.
that people are also engaging in the verbalization of things, but the recognition that our bodies speak differently.
Yeah.
And that it may provide an additional or release that words can't.
Right. And I think having a therapist there, there are times when I'll talk to a yoga teacher after a class about what my experience was, but I think having a therapist using yoga in therapy as a form of mental health care gives you a chance to kind of deconstruct, okay, what did just happen? Like, let's talk about that and the response that I had.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it makes me think about how do you are a talk therapist. So how do you integrate yoga into your therapy practice? Because you don't necessarily lead a yoga class with people all the time.
Right. Again, it really depends on the person and where they're at in terms of their openness. I have several clients who practice yoga, and so we do incorporate a lot of like yoga philosophy and talking about like, how is that coming up for you? I think, again, we can also incorporate physical poses if a person is interested in doing that, and I can kind of use my strategies as a teacher to help them reflect on what is happening right now mentally and emotionally as I ask you to do this physical pose. Can we do some breath work to help you breathe through how the physical pose is happening? There are a lot of physical poses that can feel very empowering, which I love to do like with kids or young people that I worked with. Like power poses almost, but they're forms of yoga poses that can feel that way for people. So really figuring out, based on the person in front of me, like how yoga might be incorporated if it's something that they're interested in and what parts of it might be helpful for them.
Well, it has me thinking about times, and I'm not trained in yoga, but times where someone might be talking about something in a therapy session that maybe you even say, where are you feeling that in your body right now?
Yeah.
I would guess you do. And there might be a pose to allow one to very much validate where someone is experiencing physically whatever they're talking about out loud. So I don't know, but I'm not in your office with you, but I could see that maybe even in a session, you all of a sudden kind of focus on breath, which is part of yoga, is one of the limbs, or a particular pose, even like, let's hold that.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. And to think of that relationship, I just was thinking, well, that would be a very cool, like, educational piece to educate some therapists. Like, here are some basic concepts and poses and things like that for them to also think about the concept.
Yeah, and things you can teach your clients to go home and to me, that's like body validation.
Yes.
Totally.
That they can practice on their own outside of the therapy realm with you to encourage that.
Yep.
So much to think about here. We're headed to a commercial break, everyone. But when we come back, we will talk through questions from you all. Process your thoughts in just a moment.
You gotta find the people. Express yourself.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you all, our listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly, or email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. Of course, follow us on social media as well. We really do want to hear from you and what you are wondering about.
Thank you, everyone who was wondering about yoga to promote mental well-being. I do think it's testament to this idea that we're looking for things in addition to talk therapy that help us promote not only recurrence of illness, but well-being. And we've talked on the show a lot about what that is. One listener said, I'm not big on talk, so I've never tried therapy before. Hear you. But I think yoga could be a good fit for me. How do I go about finding a provider who offers this? And I first want to say, well, listener, look up Amanda.
Yes, Amanda.
Because you can go to the BT website, but Becoming Together Therapy and becomingtogethermn.com. Look up Amanda's bio. Look at our events that we have. We do offer things around yoga. But what would you say, Amanda?
Well, that was the first thing I was going to say. I think also if you know someone either in the therapy or yoga community, those are great people to try to access to help you find a connection with a provider if you're not able to contact us at BT or if it's like outside of your distance. Those people often have kind of, cues on like who within these communities is doing this type of work. If not, you can just try Google. There's a lot of therapist search engines that you can use keywords to search. You could search somatics. A lot of people practice somatics or yoga in those search engines to find a therapist who would maybe also be trained as a yoga teacher or at least incorporate some ideas around movement and breath work into their practice.
Yeah, some clinics call it holistic therapy. If you Googled holistic therapy clinics, there are more and more places that are therapists, clinical therapists who are getting yoga teacher trained. I'm seeing more and more of that. Well, that leads to the second question, which is where could someone go if they wanted to learn more? And to this listener, I 100% hear you. I think Tara and I are both in the bucket of, even during the commercial break, we were saying, I need to go back and retry or try again yoga from a different lens. You were saying that.
Absolutely. I think, and what Amanda said is, it isn't something, I tried it, didn't work. It's, you can pick yourself up and just continue your journey with it, with this new perspective, which would just be, you just go into it thinking differently.
Totally.
And so what an incredible opportunity.
Yeah. Where would you say people could go if they wanted to learn more?
Well, I would love for people to reach out to me directly, Amanda at becomingtogethermn.com.
Okay.
I'm happy to connect with anyone, even if we're not going to do services together. I will send you my resource list. I can send you some YouTube recs, things like that. I put a small list together of some of my favorite yoga books. So Living Your Yoga, Ignite Your Yoga, The Yamas and Niyamas, and Perfectly Imperfect are all great, I think, starting points in terms of learning a little bit more about some of the philosophy parts of yoga and incorporation kind of into your daily life, if that's interesting to you. There's a lot of great content, a lot of great creators on Instagram and TikTok within the yoga community. And of course, YouTube, there are some great practitioners also.
Wow.
Yeah. And some videos out there, some places offer free videos of classes or poses. I would guess that there are listeners out there today who are saying, I didn't even know there were 8 limbs.
Totally.
To this tree of yoga, there are many different branches. And so those book recommendations are super helpful because people probably, like me, are wondering, what is it beyond a pose? I've only known the pose.
Yeah. Right.
And so part of it gets at the purpose.
Totally.
And the function of the pose. What's the point of it?
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. We're at the end of our show already for today. Thank you for listening this morning, everyone. Join us next week as we process more mental health focused topics. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself. Remember, Connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one that the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.
Some do, some don't, some will, some won't.